welcome to the community podcast here at Big Condo Radio. I'm your host, Chase Johnson Lynch, and I usually have been doing a series of worldwide interviews here on Condo, but I'm bringing it back to our community, bringing it back to our neighborhood, and once again, talking to people that I'm interested in, that I think you would be interested in, and have something to say. So I'm joined here by an old friend who used to have a show with me here on Condor Online when that's what the original name was. And I'm joined here by Paul Gunson from Family Money Trees. Hello, Paul.
Hi Chase, good to see you again. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, my friend. And like this is with heavy sadness that well that we're having this conversation. But I mean, I appreciate you willing to come on and share your story and what's going on because as you know, we've all been affected by this pandemic that has been going on. A lot of times online, they try not to say the name and everything else like that. But what we haven't really heard from are people who have personally been affected by this pandemic, and not just been affected, but has lost a loved one very early on in the early stages and everything. So you said you wanted to come on and share your story about your wife Pat, whom you lost back in February, and if you could kind of like take us back to where it began and what happened.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my wife has underlying health issues anyway, so the key thing here is she'd fallen quite poorly around about the 22nd of February, to the point that she was experiencing respiratory issues and she was admitted into hospital, quite under emergency conditions. Uh, Over the next sort of 24 hours, 48 hours, she started to show signs of improvement to the point that she was taken out of ICU, which was, acute treatment. And she was moved on to a side ward. And over the course of the next 10 days, things seemed to be going well. She was improving to the point that we started to ask, when was she going to be released to come home? And we got up to the 5th. Now, at that point, there was no real talk of COVID 19 in the UK, and certainly, things were not geared up for that. On the 5th, I got a phone call in the early hours of the morning, around about 5 a.m., to say that my wife was experiencing severe breathing problems and could I come into the hospital. So I immediately went in with my oldest grandson and I contacted the family and said, look, I haven't been given too many details, but I kind of got a gut feeling that there was a real problem here. So I called the family members and they followed down within about an hour. When I got there, my wife was in severe pain to the point that she was really, really struggling to breathe. And over the next sort of 4 to 5 hours, we just couldn't get any relief. To the point that the hospital staff, while doing the best that they could with nebulizers and oxygen, they really, really struggled to ease their pain. When the cardiologist eventually got there in the late morning rounds, he looked at the x-rays and saw that lungs were filling up with fluid, and they obviously went into an acute treatment area to give her possibly everything that they could have treated her with. They managed to get her into a morphine environment, which eased the pain to the point that she could get back into bed and get a little bit of comfort. But then that was around about 11 a.m. in the morning. By 12 o'clock, she had a full crisis team around her. They could not manage her conditions. And over the next 4 hours, she had 5 doctors, 3 nursing staff all around her, working frantically to try and find what was going on, try and identify. She had diuretics, she had morphine, she was getting IV treatment, and just none of it was working. We got to 4 p.m. and we hadn't had any time with my wife at that point for about 4.5 hours. And then they came out and they asked us the inevitable question: has she been to Italy? Has she come into contact with
Mm.
anybody who was returning from overseas? To which we had or couldn't identify anybody because they suspected COVID-19.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of the time lapse, it normally takes about 5 days to identify that virus and then consequently treat it. But because they hadn't checked on it, hadn't been set up for this in the NHS whatsoever, she actually then, within an hour of that conversation, passed away.
Wow.
And she totally drowned, her lungs completely filled with water.
Wow.
So,
I mean, my condolences there, Paul, and I really do appreciate you sharing your story because, like as you said, this was early days at that point, especially over here in the UK. Where the NHS wasn't prepared for these cases, and you know, now obviously, when you said that your family was visiting and stuff like that, you were telling me, I was asking if your family was all right. You were saying that people are all right, but they have been in incubation periods.
yeah, again, I have some health issues. I had a heart attack 6 months ago. I'm diabetic, and I also have a grandson that has cystic fibrosis, and a couple of grandchildren who have asthma-related illnesses. Now, they were all exposed to their mum and nan and wife. So we had to go into what was then a very difficult time because although she passed away on the 6th of March, we then started to have the issues about social, isolation,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to the point we planned the service for my wife. The service got cancelled, and it just snowballed. It snowballed to the point that we actually were not sure whether we could actually hold the service. So literally within 10 days of her passing, we didn't even know whether we'd be able to hold the funeral. Luckily enough, we were able to lay her to rest, and we were grateful for everything that was done. But we've had to follow the guidelines that the government are issuing now. But for us, it came a little bit too late, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because we potentially were exposed, as were others. So, we've followed the guidelines, we've isolated. Luckily enough, we did this early enough before all the panic set in. We were able to get food quite freely. So we were able to prepare for the 3 months' time that we were eventually going to be isolated to. But yeah, everyone's good right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of precautionary stuff in place. My son's got a respirator. My son's got a face mask to uh, steam to make sure we were constantly cleaning his lungs out.
Yeah.
Got all his medication ready so that if he catches it, we're in the best possible position to
Yeah.
treat. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, our condolences goes out to you and your family and everything else like that, and sharing. And but not on like on a different note, but as I said, me and you used to do a podcast together. Don't get me started, and everything like that. You're a self-professed conspiracy theorist and all that. But that also just means that you're into educating yourself as much as you can, you know. And you were telling me about a particular thing about TEDx that Bill Gates had put out and everything, and I thought that was kind of like interesting of note. What was it that you want to say about that one?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I am a conspiracy theorist by nature. I don't take to heart too much what the government say. largely. I've kind of had previous conversations with you around currency and certainly cryptocurrency education,
Mm-hmm.
why I invest in gold and silver and that kind of thing. But what was key with the Bill Gates TEDx broadcast is that it dates back to 2015,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually publicly announced that in the year 2020 there was going to be a virus that would be released on the world, and we need to prepare for it. Now that's interesting
Mm.
because forget the conspiracy theory bit now, is
It's
that
really on tape.
there were 5 years to prepare for this, which kind of makes me think, was this a man-made virus? My conspiracy hat says yes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he also, in a different broadcast, said that we have a surplus population that we need to address. And you kind of, put one and one together and you get 28 if you want.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so, while I commend the NHS staff for all that they did for my wife, uh, would she be alive if we'd have been prepared? Well, I don't know, and I can't answer that. I'm just grateful that I believe in a God, and I believe we'll be together again. But the key is, I do believe we're only being told what we want to be told, what they want us to know. I think there is a hidden agenda, and I hope that I'll share some of that information at a later date.
yeah,
But clearly, somebody knew something, and if Bill Gates can get up on a world stage and say there's going to be a pandemic in the year 2020, well, that kind of set the alarm bells ringing for me. Uh,
yeah.
and
Well, the reason why I thought the Bill Gates thing was an interesting, segue is because, what you personally do, you know, basically, you have your own company, family, money trees, and you are involved in like kind of like money marketing, debt management, or supporting people and all that kind of stuff. Maybe tell people like what you do in that field of study.
yeah, working with some really really top people, and I'm now talking, solicitors, barristers, etc. I came across some information several years ago related to debt, in that the whole thing of money, sorry, not money, currency, is basically a scam, and the pound notes and the $5 bills that we have, etc., etc. There's no intrinsic value to them. It's just a promise to pay. It's a piece of paper. It's an IOU, blah blah blah. But we used to be attached to a gold standard, and that got removed with President Nixon in 1971. A different story that. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: debt is now crippling people. And now, given this issue today with this COVID-19, we've got self employed people losing their jobs, we've got people in employment losing their jobs. And the biggest worry for me, I've just laid my wife down to rest and I can't mourn. I haven't had the time to mourn because I've had all the related stress of this COVID-19. I'm now trying to protect my grandson. I'm trying to resolve the debt issues. I've been phoning the bank up. I've been phoning the debtors up. And I know that I'm stressed out. So I'm pretty certain there are other people who may watch this video who will be totally stressed out. So what I'm going to do over the coming weeks is I've got some very very close friends who are psychologists, child psychologists. I work in the healthcare profession. I look after autistic adults. I'm a foster carer. I'm employed, and I have a business. So I know what you're facing, what people are going to be facing right now, and there's an uncertainty in the world. The world has changed. We as of this COVID-19, we're entering into a new world, and I want to help people with debt. I want to help people who have mortgage issues. We have some programs that can help.
You
Uh,
talking about like food parcels and stuff like that?
yeah, and food. It's getting prepared. What can you do? I mean, I've been talking about prepping for this for years, We've always had around about a 3 month stock of food. So it's about being prepared for what's coming, because I don't think we're anywhere near we're still at the tip of the iceberg with this. The government are being very cagey. They're only giving us the information that kind of doesn't panic us. But people are panicking. People are going and they're getting lots of stores that they perhaps wouldn't have got. There's also a stupidity out there, because I have been shopping. I've been very, very lucky that when I went shopping, which was shortly after my wife's passing, because I kind of saw what was coming, because I was prepared, we got enough food that I knew that we would be okay for 3 months.
Are you one of those people that was overstocking on toilet paper, Paul?
Do you know what? There were two things I couldn't get: toilet paper and pasta. Anything
Yeah,
else,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
anything
yeah.
else, I could have bought it in abundance. I could have started my own business selling the stuff,
I couldn't
but I
find
did.
any pasta
I,
either.
I got enough because I kind of was anticipating something was coming. I've been talking about market crashes for years. I've been talking about new military systems for years, and I've been a prepper by nature, and I'm a conspiracy theorist by nature. So I kind of knew something was coming. Did I know it was going to be COVID-19? No, I didn't. And certainly when I saw that Bill Gates podcast, of all people to shock, it's pretty hard to shock me, but I was quite disgusted by finding that.
Yeah,
Because here was a guy who's well known, world known, multimillionaire. You got to kind of ask yourself: is he in a circle that knows more than we know? And I'd like to think he was.
yeah,
So yeah. So my advice to people right now is the thing that we're not talking, which is something that I want to talk, because I'm also a health and social care educator, and one of my areas has been mental health. Uh, and I think that's probably the one thing no one's really, really talking about right now, is the stress, the anxiety, the issues that, I can't even go out now. You know what I mean? I can't even go and see my mum. I can't even, Boris told everybody not to go and see their mum on Mother's Day. You know,
yeah. I know. Yeah,
we were lucky. We got the family together. We went to a local park, by the Otterspool, which is by the River Mersey, and we had some really good quality time, fresh air. But even now, that's being restricted. So people are going to be really, really, really anxious. They're going to be stressed up to the hilt, and I want to kind of address that with people and just say, look,
yeah,
even someone like myself who's just lost his wife, got some health risks, got a grandson who's extremely vulnerable right now, and I've got I'm equally concerned about my granddaughter who's working in the NHS.
yeah,
She's going in every day, facing this every day. At least I'm isolated. I can choose who comes to my door, who doesn't. I can choose. But I've actually said, I prefer you don't come because you won't get in.
yeah,
It's now that, for me, it's now that serious. So
yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people, and also I have a dear friend, church member, who lost their mum on Sunday with similar conditions. Now, again, she hasn't been identified as having COVID-19 because, again, sorry, love what the government are trying to do, but conspiracy bit, we're not geared up for it. To the point, and this really hit home yesterday. I got a phone call from my daughter.
Mm.
She lost her husband 17 years ago when my oldest grandson was only 8 months old. Now, that was to a tumour, so it was unrelated. But her mother in law is in chronic renal failure and she's on dialysis, to the point yesterday she was rushed into hospital with underlying respiratory problems. Now, luckily enough, she's back home, but she's now being tested The difference between 4 weeks ago and today or yesterday, when the ambulance turned up at my house for my wife, they just came as any normal ambulance would come. When they came to my daughter's mother-in-law, they came in full bio kit.
Wow.
Full
Well,
bio
like
kit.
the crazies, the hazmat suits and
Yeah,
stuff.
just in 4 weeks. When she got to the hospital, they wouldn't even allow her husband to go in. She was
Mm.
in complete quarantine. They weren't allowed to go in the hospital. They wouldn't allow any visitors. Now that's the difference in just 4 weeks. So
Yeah, well,
my advice to people who watch this is real, people. It's real.
yeah,
Listen to the guidance and stay at home. If you
yeah,
don't have to go out, don't go out.
yeah. No, 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 definitely. And I mean, like the thing about it is, I just want to also just say is that like there were the times of when we used to tune people out, when they start talking about conspiracy theories, because what is a conspiracy theory but a thought that may not be yours, that may be a bit outrageous, but then also too is, oh my God, it'll hit you when you least expect it, like a lightning bolt and everything. And I mean, obviously, you know, um, things we are in a point of change. We're in the middle of it. You know what I mean? Like being in the fishbowl. And so, and what I'm really talking about is unemployment, money management. What are we going to do tomorrow? Right now we got the government saying that they're offering, small businesses, business loans and everything else like that. And as a small business, we wait. But then the thing about it is that like so when somebody says about the conspiracy of money and coin and crypto even it's like it makes you think, is the money actually in the level of change? Do you know
Oh,
what I mean? I mean, like, we switched over to contactless cards pretty
yeah,
fast. Where it's like, yeah, you just got a card, you go, bing, you just press it against an electric eye, and they take your money. You know what I mean? So it's like this is what we are as a society. These things happen, and we just roll with it. We roll with it.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
then there are people running along the side going, I told you," about this coming. And it's like when we were going to do that show with you, or about the arc. Where this was about maybe about a year ago when we were talking about crypto, and it was kind of like, and I said to you that, well, you're kind of like Noah, not just because you look like him, right? But you're kind of like Noah,
I've
yeah,
trimmed the beard
kind of
since.
like Noah, because you're trying to tell me about this thing, and I was just like, right. But then those are the people that are sitting on the side watching Noah build the ark.
Absolutely.
You know
And,
what I mean? They watching him and his sons build the ark. It's going, yeah, nothing's gonna happen. But then the flood came.
yes. Well, I'll be honest with you, and as I say, we've had that conversation, but here's my tuppence worth. I do believe that this is biblical. Now, some people will say, "Oh, it's not." Trust me, this is biblical. We are in the end days. Is it going to end tomorrow? I don't think so. Is it going to end next week? I don't think so. But here's the thing: there are practical things that we can do. We can get out of debt, and I have solutions for that. We can prepare for this. We can learn from it. The biggest problem that humanity faces is that we don't learn the lessons of our past. Now,
There we go.
the conversation I had with you last year and a bit earlier than that is there are good people out there who are trying to prepare people for what's happening. Do I think there's going to be a global economic crash? I've been teaching it for 5 years. We are in a global economic crash right now that is going to bring on a recession like nothing else.
Mm,
Now, I've been saying it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. It might be next year, it might be the year after. I did feel it was going to be between now and 2022. it's kind of come at the earlier stages, I think, now. But here's the thing: the people that control the world, the 1% of the 1%, it's engineered because they do want to go to a cashless society. They do want to come up with a new solution. And I do believe that that new solution is already in the plans. And I
Mm,
think this global crash that may happen, certainly over the coming months, it will bring about a new military system. It will be a digital system. People will say it's technology and we need to advance as a human society. Well, I'm sorry, that's biblical. Now, here's the
well,
thing: you won't be able to buy food or sell food if you don't have that. Because here's the thing: the vaccine is the carrot, yeah?
mm,
The outcome or the control element is the microchip.
right.
And the overall thing is those who are in power will have complete control over our freedoms, because now we're losing our freedom. They'll know where you are, why you are, how you are, what you're spending your money on, how to get your money, because all of your bank details will be in your wrist. So when you go shopping, and what they'll use is they'll use COVID-19 as the reason why this has to come in place. And in that way, it will appear like, oh, well, the government are just trying to help us. Yeah?
Yeah,
Because you won't be able to go to a shop and buy food unless you've got the chip. Because what they'll say, we don't want another pandemic again. We want to make sure we never have another pandemic. And the only way that they can show that you're not going to be vulnerable is if you take the vaccine,
right.
because then they will have a full register of every single person who's had that vaccine, and
Yeah,
they'll use the chip to create the new world order,
yeah.
and that's my conspiracy.
Well, yeah, okay, that was deep. Yeah, you went down well on that one there, Paul. But like, all I gotta say is the fact that I think there's a potential for further conversations on this. Just letting people know that like I think you have a wealth of knowledge, but also too is that you have potential people that want to share that knowledge. And I think what's important is to staying on the side of how do we survive this crisis, and that is that like so with people having conversations with people around debt management, around support. I also like that there's a person that is around what to do with your kids, because I think that's where I put on my post today that it's week one for me. I know you've been in isolation for longer, but it's just the factor of that what are we going to do and how are we going to do it. And I think that as long as we provide content that will help people get through that, that is where we should be going. So I want to first of all thank you very much for coming on to the community podcast, sharing your very personal story about your wife, Pat, and everything. I'm really glad to hear that you guys were able to lay her to rest and everything. But like as you said, it's probably hard to continue to visit or something like that because of the way the lockdown situation we're all in. But I also look forward to hearing more stuff that you may have to share around like survival in this current climate, all right, and everything. So once again, Paul, thank you very much for coming on. And I'm Chase Johnson Lynch. You're listening to Paul Gunson. This has been the Community Podcast. All right, thank you very much.